Many of us have grown up hearing the phrase, trust your gut. But what does a maze of intestines have to do with anything? Well, aside from aiding in digestion, research has shown that our gastrointestinal systems have a lot more power over our lives than we thought, the source being an intricate community called the gut microbiome.
The microbiome refers to the trillions of organisms that live in and on our bodies, mostly in our gut. So we're talking about bacteria, viruses, fungal organisms, parasites, more than 1 billion bacteria in just one drop of fluid in your colon alone.
That's Dr. Robynne Chutkan, a gastroenterologist with her own practice in Washington, D.C., called the Digestive Center for Wellness. As a microbiome expert, her new book, The Antiviral Gut, Tackling Pathogens from the Inside Out, reveals just how critical this part of our body is to our overall health.
70 to 80% of our immune system is actually physically located in our gut. So we have these trillions of microbes on one side of the gut lining, and then all these other immune cells on the other side. And the gut microbes are in constant communication with the immune cells. They're basically like air traffic control for the immune system, telling the immune cells what to respond to, what to ignore, what to get really excited about. So there's such an intimate connection. It really is like a hand and glove connection between the gut microbiome and the immune system.
However, a lot of our normal habits can weaken our microbiome and compromise our immune system. The general term for an unhealthy microbiome is dysbiosis, which Chutkan says is linked to certain autoimmune diseases, allergies, and even cancers.
Now, you may have just minor symptoms of dysbiosis. You may have gas or bloating or a change in gut motility or a change in bowel habits. And this doesn't always mean that your gut microbiome is messed up. It could be that you have slow motility through the gut because you don't eat enough fiber, or you're dehydrated, you don't drink enough water. So it's hard to draw a straight line from some of these symptoms to a disrupted microbiome, but we do know that because the microbes play such an integral role in all of these different health processes, when the microbiome is disrupted, we tend to see a lot of disturbances in our body and with our overall health.
Diagnosing gut dysbiosis is difficult because doctors can't see the microbiome, unlike other conditions such as stomach ulcers or gallstones.
We have lots of different tests like CAT scans and ultrasounds and blood tests to diagnose them. But the microbiome is an invisible kingdom, and it is a relatively new frontier in medicine, even though we've known about these microbes since the 1600s, when Antony von Leeuwenhoek first looked at his own dental plaque under the microscope and saw these little animalcules, as he called them, moving around. It's literally taken us a few hundred years to realize that these organisms are more friend than foe, and that they are very invested in our well-being. So I think the problem in medicine is we've spent so much time thinking about killing microbes and really focusing on Pasteur's germ theory,
which states that organisms can get into our bodies and make us sick, which is true. But Chutkan says it's just one side of the story. A second theory was developed by a different scientist around the same time.
Antoine Béchamp championed something that he called terrain theory, which says that if you have healthy soil, and by soil, we're really referring to the gut microbiome, if you have healthy soil, disease can pass somewhat harmlessly through your body. The seed can move through the soil without causing a lot of disruption. So both aspects are important. Germ theory, it's important to try and limit exposure to pathogens when we can. But terrain theory, it's important to have healthy soil. The health of the host, us, matters. And it may matter as much, if not more than, the potency of the pathogen in some cases.
So when we develop dysbiosis, we put ourselves at a greater risk of serious illness. Chutkan says the first step in fixing the condition is taking a look at your medicine cabinet. She advises that we be honest about which medications we absolutely need and stop using all the ones that just make our lives a little bit easier.
Every single medication out there, from prenatal vitamins all the way to potent antibiotics, they all have a downside. There is a price you pay on the back end for all of these pharmaceuticals. So the first and most important question is to really do that risk-benefit analysis and make sure that the drug you're taking is something you absolutely need to be on.
And if you do need certain medications, there are ways to reduce the harm these drugs may have on your gut, like asking your doctor about taking a lower dosage. If you're about to start a cycle of antibiotics, Chutkan offers some methods to keep your microbiome functioning as well as possible.
From a dietary point of view, things you can do, you can eat foods that are sort of anti-yeast foods like pumpkin seeds, coconut oil, rutabaga, seaweed. These all will help to combat yeast overgrowth after antibiotics. You can make a mushroom tea, maitake or shiitake mushrooms, using 1 or 2 dried mushroom caps with hot water and steeping that to make a sort of probiotic tea, if you will. You can also think about taking a probiotic while you're taking the antibiotic to combat the effects. And I give some detailed help in the book about how to choose a probiotic and which one might be helpful in the setting of antibiotics. So there is absolutely a lot you can do. But again, I want to stress that the most important thing is to not take the antibiotic in the first place, if that is a possibility.
Chutkan says that being exposed to nature also has a really positive effect on our microbiome.
We know that kids, for example, who are exposed to animals, either on a farm like horses or cows, or domestic animals like a dog at home, those kids have fewer infections, they need fewer antibiotics, they tend to have fewer autoimmune diseases. So bringing a little bit of the outdoors in is a great way to help heal your microbiome.
Being in control of other factors like stress and sleep will also make a big difference. However, one of the most important influences on a microbiome is actually our diet.
We know that what we eat has a profound impact on our gut microbes, and we know the number one food that we should be eating to cultivate a healthy microbiome is plant fiber. The American Gut Project, which is a nonprofit that studies the microbiome, published a study in 2018, and they found that the number one predictor of a healthy microbiome was the variety of different plants that people were eating. So the magic number is 30 or more different plant foods per week was associated with a much more diverse, robust, healthy microbiome.
Now, don't worry, it may sound like an impossible feat, but eating 30 different types of plant protein is easier than you think. The term plant foods doesn't just refer to lettuce and cabbage. It also includes fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices. You can have around 6 different ingredients in a single bowl of oatmeal for breakfast, and that's just one out of many meals in your week. Now, you may be thinking, why can't I just take a green supplement and move on? Unfortunately, Chutkan says nothing processed will be able to compare to real food.
The fiber that you're getting in a supplement comes from a factory. It's processed. And that's the main difference between food too. So if you think about something like apples versus applesauce, when you look at an apple, you can see, okay, this apple came off a tree. Applesauce, there's no applesauce tree. This came out of a factory. So even though the ingredients in applesauce may only be apples, it's still a processed food. And so that's sort of the difference between a supplement versus a living food.
That's not to say Chutkan's against using supplements. In fact, she says that when used appropriately, they can be a really nice addition to a proper diet. However, make sure to read the ingredient list before purchasing these products. Chutkan says manufacturers often add fillers, colors, and flavorings that can irritate our gut. She says this often happens in some of the foods many of us eat every day.
We know that emulsifiers in food that will give things a nice consistency can be very damaging to our gut lining and our gut bacteria. We know artificial sweeteners in food also can be disruptive to the microbiome. So it's important to think of these ways that our food is sort of adulterated and processed. And even if it is a healthy ingredient, like apples, is it coming from the ground or from a tree, or is it coming out of a factory?
And with many of our food products today being processed, and many Americans taking more than one daily medication, it may seem like it's too late for a solution. But Chutkan says the great thing about our gut microbiome is that each day is a new opportunity to make it healthier.
Our microbiome is constantly changing and responding to changes in our diet, our environment, even our mood and our thoughts. So, for example, there was a study published in the journal Nature where researchers took 9 volunteers and they put them on a sort of low-carb Atkins type diet, pork rinds and prosciutto.
Then cycled them off for 5 days before introducing a new plant-based diet. Participants ate jasmine rice, lentils, and mangoes.
And they found that within about 30 hours of food hitting the gut, they saw dramatic shifts in the microbiome. And they also saw that those microbial shifts were leading to genetic shifts, that different genes being turned on and off as a result of the diet. And again, it doesn't mean that you have to be vegan, vegetarian, lacto-ovarian, any of this stuff. It's not the label. It's just getting more plant foods into your diet. And that can make a difference in literally a day and a half.
But this change isn't going to come from one new superfood the internet has deemed as the Holy Grail. In fact, you may not have to add anything into your diet or lifestyle at all.
The biggest issue that I see with damage to the microbiome is because of things people are taking that are damaging it. So over-the-counter medications, prescription medications. So it's generally not something that you're going to take like a probiotic or a prebiotic or a supplement to fix your microbiome. It's generally about things you're going to stop doing, like stop taking the acid blocker or the nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drug or the hormonal therapy or the immunosuppressive drug. And that's what's going to improve the health of your microbiome.
Overall, Chutkan says that our health is truly in our own hands, and we have to choose to make the right decisions that will keep us functioning at our best. Chutkan's book offers a comprehensive plan to get your gut health back on track, as well as helpful tips and recipes. The Antiviral Gut is available now wherever books are sold. You can find more information about Dr. Robynne Chutkan on our website, radiohealthjournal.org. Our writer-producer is Kristen Farah. I'm Reed Pence. Coming up next week on Radio Health Journal.
There really are some outdated ideas about what chronic fatigue syndrome is. So I usually tell people, forget everything you thought about chronic fatigue syndrome before now.
A condition that's surrounded by doubt is finally getting the research attention that's long overdue.
Then chronic heartburn isn't normal. In fact, it can cause more harm than smoking.
Everybody thinks it's not a big deal to have heartburn, but nobody realizes that it's the number one cause of cancer in America for the esophagus.
All that and more on Radio Health Journal.
I'm Nancy Benson, host of Radio Health Journal. If you enjoy listening to Radio Health Journal, you'll also like our sister show, Viewpoints, which covers a wide array of topics from education to history to the environment. Here's a preview of what they're covering this week on Viewpoints.
I think in general, parties feel, okay, if you've lost, you need to move on and we need to bring fresh blood in to run against the challenger on the other party.
The 2024 presidential election is just around the corner. Then
there's fewer youth who actually engage with someone who's served in the military, and so they might not see it as an avenue of service.
Understanding why our military is shrinking. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth this week on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
Listen to Viewpoints on your favorite radio station and subscribe and listen to shows anytime on Apple Podcasts and Google Play.
And that's Radio Health Journal for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more. And check Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify for a library of past programs. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and information about our guests at radiohealthjournal.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Radio Health Journal.